Hey, so the Rotten Tomatoes score for Hellboy came out, but I want to warn you before you do that you he saw it. I base all my movie-going experiences on Rotten Tomatoes scores, so I don't want to see it in theaters anymore. Okay, I see that made you even more mad, borderline furious, so I'm gonna go. Leave you with that. Sorry. Okay.
While we haven't seen the new Hellboy film, we are big fans of Del Toro's version of the character, so we thought we would use the release of the reboot as an excuse to do some Hellboy effects of our own, also known as Josh's resting bitch face.
It doesn't even make sense.
You're a bitch. Before we get into that, you might have noticed that we didn't put up an episode last Sunday, which was supposed to be this episode, but we weren't able to finish because we all got the stomach flu. And I'll save you on the details. But you'll also wonder why we've been posting on Sundays, and that's just because we're trying something new. We've noticed a lot of you don't get notified when we put up episodes, so we've been trying different days to see what works best, and so far, it seems like a lot of you are getting those notifications when we put up on Sundays, so we might make the switch. We're not really sure yet. We're gonna test a little bit more, and we'll let you know more as we figure it out. But to shoot this effect similar to when we shot the finger removal, we added physical elements to help tie the digital into the scene and onto our actor. So I grabbed the nose and scar wax and created 2 circles on Josh's head and feathered that in, giving us the skin area that the horns will be protruding from, with these 2 X's inside, which are going to help Thompson with tracking later on. But now with our footage shot, we can send it to Thompson.
What you got there? Shipment for you. Wise guy.
And now that he has it, he'll bring that footage into Adobe After Effects. Now we're gonna do some 3D face tracking, and to do that, you need to first duplicate this comp and open that up. Move the footage layer until the face is in the middle of the comp, then go into comp settings. We'll call this Josh Face, and then change the pixel dimensions to a square by unlinking them and changing the width dimension to the same as the height. For us, it's 1080 since we shot in HD. Now relink and scale the dimensions down until the face is pretty much filling the frame, readjusting the layer position if needed. To get the best results from the 3D camera tracker, we're gonna roto Josh's face so that the tracker can't see the static background. And we'll just create a simple mask like this, then keyframe the mask through the timeline until we have something like this. And freaking action. Nope. Cutting. Next, we're going to drop this comp into a new comp, and we'll call that 3D horns. Right-click the layer and apply a 3D camera tracker, and then let it analyze. Once it's done and you get a bunch of tracking markers, try to choose the one that's visible throughout a lot of the clip. Then right-click and create a new null and camera. Now, if all went well, we have a 3D camera track of the face. And you can delete that null now since it won't be needed anymore. With the 3D camera tracker, it's always going to give varying results with different footage. Sometimes the world scale can be nice and small, but other times, like in this instance, the world scale can be massive, meaning you need to push 3D layers really far back in Z-space, like you can see with this text. This can be an issue with Element 3D, so it is best to increase the world scale. To do this, create a new null and switch on 3D for the layer. Parent the camera to the null, then scale it down. The smaller you scale, the bigger the world, meaning less distance to position 3D layers. We will go for 20 as we don't know how big we want the horns to be yet, but you can go less than 20 if you need to. Now unparent the camera and you can delete the null. Next, we're going to go into the comp settings and increase the dimensions back to 1080 by 1080 or whichever height and dimension your original footage is. Now we get some horns. First, create a solid layer, which we're going to call left horn, apply Video Copilot's Element 3D and open Scene Setup. To test, we're going to create a cone model. It's important that the base is flat on the grid, so click this drop down, select the bottom to change the alignment, then we'll scale it up a bit into more of a point. So with our scene, the cone is very close to the camera, so we'll still need to push it back in Z space, but nowhere near as far as we would have had to if we didn't do that null trick. And everyone's camera track will be different, but you will still need to reposition your Element 3D objects to the correct area of the face. So in the world transformation settings, we're going to push it back with the Z position value, change the world rotation, and change X and Y positions too. And hey, here's Josh in a dunce hat, because he's a bitch.
No, I'm not! I'm not! I'm not a bitch!
Then under group 1, particle look, you can change the size, and now we have Josh as a unicorn. Then once you position the cone over the left horny hole and adjusted
the
size and adjusted.
Don't run from this. Acknowledge this. Horn.
Horn.
No why.
No why. And adjusted the size for the base, play it through, and hopefully it is all sticking correctly. If it does, like it has for us, the next step is adding the real horn model. For this, we actually created our own horns, which we are putting up for free because we love you. So if you do want to grab them, check the notes below for a download link to download.
Wow. Nailed that.
I just...
Stuck the landing. You're an asshole.
Damn.
That had nothing to do with your mess up. I just think you are an asshole. But you're my asshole.
Thompson used Blender for this, which is free software, but inside there he used a Bezier curve with taper and beveled in the shape we wanted for the horn. Then in sculpt mode, he used various brushes to age the horn until we had this. Then he mirrored it and exported both the left and right as OBJ models. Now back in Element 3D, you can delete the test cone and import both OBJs. You can't see them right now as they're too small, so on both models, check this normalized size box here. Then set the alignment to bottom for both of them and adjust the positions until they are both closely over the center. Then we can hide the right horn for now. For the material, we used one from Pro Shader 2 called Concrete Cracked 02, but you can use a free texture of concrete or whatever else you think would work for a horn-like texture. But back in the composition, you can see that you need to scale the horn up to fill the hole, so adjust the particle size and world position. And if you want, adjust the world rotation to try different angles for the horn, which can give various styles. You can also go into individual X, Y, Z scale options to change the shape and size of the horn to help fit your shot's framing if needed. And because we have the horns in the center of the element scene, it means these scales don't alter its base position. It can also be really useful to use these effects under Group 1 deform tabs, such as taper, which can make it wider at the base and narrow at the top, if you want that thick horn.
Stop it!
Then just readjust size and position to compensate. Also, things like twists can give you curly horns, which could look cool for some sort of demon, or just some weird and cool designs that you can play around with to get all sorts of styles. Next, we're gonna add it to the right horn, but before we do, sponsor, which is us. We are the sponsor, which isn't a sponsor because we don't pay us. But anyway.
Swag like me, you can never duplicate and get a swag like me. Swag like me, you can never duplicate and get a swag like me.
If you didn't know, we have a friggin' podcast. The name of the podcast? The Film Riot Podcast. Name that because we are incredibly creative with names, but mostly because we hate coming up with names. But we are on our 24th episode of the podcast now. We've had guests like the editor of John Wick, director of 10 Cloverfield Lane, and the coming Uncharted film, the director of Shazam, Matt Lantern, the voice of Anakin Skywalker, and a bunch of my personal collaborators. The idea is to just have a long, open, and honest conversation about the industry and each filmmaker's process. So if you did use some podcasts, check out the link below and jump in wherever you listen to podcasts, or just go to filmriot.com because we have that too.
Don't do it.
It's our
It
podcast.
sucks.
It's our podcast.
It sucks.
Logo. Wow. Thanks, us. But let's jump back into this horn-filled tutorial. We have our left horn, and now we're gonna duplicate this horn layer and rename it right horn. Then in Element, we're gonna make the right model visible and hide the left, and then change the world position and rotation to place it over the right horny hole.
Ryan,
We'll
horn.
also change some of our...
No why.
I know.
Horn.
Horn. We'll also change some of our deform settings to match this angle better, and now Josh is twice as horny as he was before.
Brian! It's a family show! For fuck's sake!
Then what's with the mouth? Now we have two main light directions in this scene, one warm light from the left and a cooler one from the computer screen on the right. So let's create a new point light, and we'll change the color to a sort of dull blue for the computer light. For our scene, we needed to change the light's Z position to 0 to be able to see it, but again, everyone's scene is going to be different. We'll move the light to match the angle of the practical light and lower the intensity. Then we'll duplicate the light and move it over to the left and choose a warmer tone from Josh's face to match. Back to the first comp now, and we'll drop in our 3D horns comp. Because we moved the Josh layer to the center earlier, we need to move it back over. We can use the Josh's rotoed face as a guide to see when it is in place. Once it's in place, we can go into the horns comp and hide the Josh layer. We'll apply a curves effect and alter the contrast and the colors to match better to the scene. Since we can see the horns in the full scene, if we wanted to adjust the light or add more, we can lock this comp and then double click and open the horns comp and drag that window over to the right so that we can alter the lights and see the update in the Josh comp. And we'll just alter the color and intensity a little bit to help them match the scene a bit better. And if you're like us and end up liking the lighting on the one horn but not the other, what we decided to do was duplicate the horn comp and make one just for the left and the other for the right. This way we can alter the lights to affect them individually for better results. And after all of that, we finally had this. For turning Josh's skin red, we just created an adjustment layer above the footage, did a simple keyframe mask around the areas showing his skin, and added a hue saturation effect to strengthen the colors and shift them to red. Then keyframe the opacity from 0 to 100 over a few seconds to have it fade on. We also added a new curves on the horns to match the darker red and keyframe those to fade on as well. For the flame crown, while shooting, I added in a can light, which was connected to a cheap $22 dimmer, which I'll add a link for below, but I shot it with that practical warm light just above Josh using the dimmer to fade the light up, simulating where the fire will be and when it will come in. Then in After Effects, we used assets for a new pack that we're working on and placed multiple flames next to each other, then used the bend effect to curve the outer ones for that crown shape. Then Thompson used Video Copilot's free Color Vibrance plugin with some glows to give it a flame look. We also used Video Copilot's heat plugin to create that heat wave distortions on the footage behind the flames. Finally, adding a light inside of After Effects for the horns to react to the flames and have that intensity turn up in time with the practical lights of the flames. So there you have it, 3D horns added to your actor, and of course all of this is customizable to create whatever look that you want. Just use those deform settings to get a variety of designs and styles. Again, check the notes below for links to everything, including our podcast, and I'll see you next time when Lizzie likes me, which means I'm good.
I ain't trying to be you, I'm me. You a carbon copy trying to imitate me. You can never duplicate and get a swag like me. You can never duplicate and get a swag like me.